I think I found a lot of success in my career in terms of putting my people first, which just naturally leads to really good work. And so I don't even want to say it as like a rule because it just feels obvious. Like if you treat people well, they'll give you really good work.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Edit Undo. Today we are speaking to Inez Patel. So I'm quite excited about the next two episodes, specifically because coincidentally, the next two we are featuring women in the design space. And the conversations and topics will be around women in the design space. As a woman, obviously, I am excited about this, but a little bit more about our guest on the show today. Inez comes from a user experience background. For those of you that don't know what that is, user experience is all about crafting and looking at someone's experience using either a system or an interface. Typically, this falls in websites and apps. And from that, she grew her career and she is now one of many female leaders and design directors in the APSA design office within South Africa. Apart from that, we'll be talking a lot about her non-profit organization called She Can Do. And let me pause there. Let's introduce or leave Inez to chat a bit and tell us a bit about her origin story and her background. But most importantly, welcome, Inez. It's so nice to see you again, and welcome to Edit Undo.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited. It's the first time I've done a podcast, so...
Nice.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I had no idea what to expect. I'm still like wondering how everything's working. But
We do too.
yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
So maybe to kick us off, Inez, can you tell us a little bit about your journey up until now and maybe also introduce She Can Do?
Okay, cool. So my journey into design started in design, actually. So my first sort of job, or it was an internship, but that was in the UX department of a digital agency. And that was kind of where I really just got introduced to the topic in full. I hadn't heard about it before the internship, and I had these really great mentors who just gave me all the books, all the things to read, all of their knowledge, and that made a really big difference to me, I think. And afterwards, I then started looking for work. I was living in Cape Town at the time. So after I finished that internship, I was looking for work and found it really difficult to find a job as a junior UX designer. I found that a lot of the spaces only wanted to recruit senior designers, so they weren't really training. So yeah, I spent a couple of months just like faffing around, but eventually I actually managed to find a job at EOH as a junior designer. And there I did a whole bunch of sort of client consulting work as a UX designer. And I think that I also had really great mentors there who taught me a lot and trusted me a lot. So moving through the different clients, I think gave me a lot of exposure to the world of UX. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. So I've sort of been stuck in it ever since. I think after that, I moved to Joburg. So I lived in Cape Town and was just really homesick. So I decided it's time to move back to Joburg. All my friends were here, all my family. And at that time, when I moved back to Joburg, I was going to work for Free Thinking then. When that happened, I was contacted by a woman named Lara Peterson. She was running what was called Ladies That UX in Cape Town, which was a meetup group.
Okay.
Yeah, and Lara was reaching out to me to, I think, like to invite me to some of the sessions that they were having in Cape Town. And I said to her, oh man, this really sucks, but I literally just moved back to Joburg. But it's something I really would have loved to, and I wish there was one in Joburg. And she said, well, you know, why we could do that if you wanted to start it up. And so we did around the time I moved to Joburg, and that was sort of where She Can Do, I guess, initially started as what was called Ladies That UX. And I sort of ran that while moving through my career. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted to ask a question there, because I know, you know, I'd like us to kind of follow you along on this journey. But, you know, sort of, there are a lot of people who are kind of like working a 9 to 5 or working like, maybe they're a freelancer and maybe it's not necessarily a 9 to 5. And, you know, they always talk about things that they think about doing, things that they'd like to contribute to, ways that they'd like to kind of make an impact. But then, you know, there's always a deadline. There's always something that you need to get done this weekend, and sort of these things never really come into fruition. So can you tell us a little bit about like what it was about this program that kind of got you interested? Because it seemed like from the very beginning, there was something about it that spoke to you.
Yeah, there was. And interestingly enough, I've never been, I don't want to use the word feminist, but I've never been a vocal feminist. I just noticed that there were issues in the industry, and often it felt as though women were experiencing the majority of it. And for me, it was just an obvious problem, an obvious pain point, an obvious thing that nobody in South Africa was yet really talking about or solving. And so there was a gap there as well.
Yeah. Okay.
For something that was really valuable. And I think, so it's also more from the design part of me that I love it so much, because it's like solving a problem that's so big. So it's, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe, you know, before we sort of move on, because you and I kind of did briefly kind of go over this, and we'll speak about how you know, Ladies at UX eventually became what it is now. But maybe from when, you know, back in the day, can you tell us a little bit about what, you know, Ladies at UX actually was about? If you had to describe it to someone who hadn't heard it before.
Sure. So Ladies at UX was a community that I sort of started up. It, however, fell under a sort of larger global brand. So Ladies at UX is a brand that exists across the world, and they've got a number of different chapters in various cities that have their own different Ladies at UX chapters, they called it. And the purpose of the organization and their work was really to find ways to upskill and support women in the UX industry. So we were wanting to be a part of this organization, this global organization of people, understanding what are the challenges that they are facing, women in particular, what are the things that they're doing in their spaces to address those issues and bring those things here. And so I think Ladies at UX started up in 2017, and we ran as sort of a meetup where we hosted monthly workshops each month with really good speakers and workshops and very interactive learning methods. Yeah, so that was back then. We were running just once a month, and we chose a topic. We focused on the topic. We taught it to people, and we taught it really well as well.
I'm intrigued. You said the content and chapters came from more of the global brand, and then when you guys started the South African branch, you kind of appropriated it to South Africa. What were some of the differences and challenges that you saw at the time, or maybe even present, in terms of the need for this space in South Africa versus the need for it existed in Europe or the Americas or something like that?
I think what's interesting about that question is that it sort of leads to the reason of why we pivoted away from the Ladies at UX brand. So that was the whole vision behind running one of their chapters. However, in reality, they didn't quite have that network or support going. So we weren't able to communicate with the other chapters. Nobody in the Slack channels would talk or share things. So it was really a bit of a waste. And what we then struggled with in addition was that we couldn't open like a bank account for sponsorship, being under the brand of someone else. And we were starting to get like monthly sponsorships from people who wanted to help us run the events. And I was accepting like I'd go to the bottle store with like the head of design at DVT, and he'd just like swipe for the alcohol. It's like weird. Like some people would just like give us cash in an envelope, and it would be like just a weird thing. And I didn't know what to do with it. And I didn't want anyone to actually accept money on behalf of an organization into their own personal accounts either. So that was really frustrating. And because we weren't getting any support from the global network, that was when we pivoted really big and we decided to rebrand. And that developed into She Can Do.
Okay. And when you say we, who's the we?
So I've had a number of really amazing women that have partnered with me on this journey along the way. When we started as Ladies That UX, it was originally a woman named Ridwana, who I haven't spoken to her in years, but I'm going to send her this. And we worked really well together, and we started most of Ladies That UX together. And we then got really busy, and I think she did all these fancy things with her life. But when we moved from Ladies at UX to She Can Do as a sort of formal nonprofit organization, we needed to register 3 directors under that. And so Ridwana, she had to drop out at that point, I think. But I've been working also with 2 women. Their names are Kate and Masachaba. So they were working with me around that time, and we, I think, collaboratively discussed how we're going to do this. Should we rebrand? Should we not? And we did. And so we signed the papers together. And so that sort of official directorship is between Kate, myself, and Masachaba. And yeah, I mean, we all have really different backgrounds, which is cool. Or not different backgrounds, actually, just different networks. So Kate is the head of research at Make Rain, an agency. And Masachaba runs the research at MultiChoice and Showmax. And then, I mean, I'm at ABSA, so it's cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's sort of turn the clock forward a little bit. So you said, you kind of moved back Joburg side, and as a result, you kind of took on this the sort of flagship for the Joburg branch of Ladies at UX, and then you started to feel a little bit of friction with the model, and sort of being a part of them, and so you sort of made this decision to pivot the nonprofit into a new brand. Now, was it just
Yes.
the brand that changed, or was there more to it than that? Like, were you still doing the same kind of workshops in education? Like, did your vision for the organization change? Like, what did that pivot look like?
It actually, was maybe more of a facelift. If I look back at it, because we didn't change our structure or our way of working. We were still doing the same work, the same monthly meetups, same, and I mean, it was good work, but it was just a different name. And our money was more formalized. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So then, from that point, so you've rebranded, you've sort of established yourself. What sort of happens next in the story of She Can Do?
So we build up and we start getting really big in the industry. I think I put a lot of effort into it. I know I resigned from like my job at some point, and spent 2 or 3 months
Sure.
really focusing on the organization and building it properly, or at least like really understanding what I wanted it to become at some point. I mean, we managed to get like a following of about 1,000 people on Meetup. We had people attending our events, and we had people hiring from within us, like, wanting to connect with our members. And we developed a really good name for ourselves. And then COVID hit. COVID hit. Like,
Yeah.
and so that was when our next big pivot had to happen, whether we liked it or not. I'm so glad for it, though. If I look at where we are now, we are so different to that, and it's like the work that we're doing now is so exciting. So I can get to that now as well.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, so COVID hit, and we continued to sort of run our meetups online. We just said, let's just do what we were doing offline online. And there were some cool moments, like we had international attendees, which obviously wouldn't have happened in the real world.
Sorry, Inez.
Yeah.
Before we continue, can you maybe just, what happens at these meetups? Like, is it just a speaker? Is it a workshop? What happens?
Yeah, so we would usually have a speaker who would speak for about 20 minutes and then run an interactive workshop where we practice the learnings from the speaker.
Okay.
And so we would work with the speaker and help them also craft the activities usually,
I
so that they were really very well connected. Which in fact sometimes I think turned into just like workshops as well. So it was very hands-on learning and really good content as well.
Specifically UX focused, or just design or creativity, or what?
It actually ranged. We did have some sort of, I think, strategy in terms of the content we wanted to address within each year. I remember we would workshop that.
Okay.
And we used to say things like, we need to do a certain amount of content that speaks to gaining actual craft skills. And I think that was like 60%. And then I think 40% was supposed to be dedicated to focusing on self-awareness, creativity, reflection exercises. I don't want to say, but soft skills.
I love how
Yeah.
intentional you guys were.
Yeah, we were really intentional.
Or
I didn't
still
mention it
are.
because it's so long ago. Yes. Um,
Okay.
and I think that was it. I think we started getting more and more intentional with the things we were doing, which has been really cool. So yeah, so we were running online, and that was cool until it wasn't. You know, I think there was a point during COVID when you just couldn't stay on the screen any longer. And so for you
I hear
to
you.
finish work and then open your laptop and go to a meetup online, it's not fun anymore. I think, and everyone was just tired. Like my team was tired, I was tired. So we were at quite like a low point, and although it was one of our lowest points, it also, I think, led to the coolest thing that we did, which was really, we just said, okay, let's stop. Let's stop everything and rejuvenate and figure out what that rejuvenation looks like. And, you know, so as designers, we went back to our audience and we did research. But we took a pause on meetups. We took a pause on talking to our community. We had a group of, I think, six designers who agreed to help us to do this research and put it into a report. And we spent maybe 8 months on it. I mean, initially we had hoped it would be 3 months, but as like working in a nonprofit as a volunteer for free with all the other things we have going on, it extended to 8 months. But that's also the cool thing about the space, is that we don't have anyone pushing back on us on timelines. So if we think we need more time, we don't have to convince anyone, which is so easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've got a question, or and I'm definitely gonna sidetrack us a little bit here, because I was just thinking about what you described, what just happened, and I'm thinking about other businesses that experience something similar. Like, you know, you've got this sort of model of how you run, and then the world flips over on its head. And it seems like most companies were they're in that kind of a situation. They just try to push on. It's just kind of like, if we add enough features, then the customers are going to come.
Yeah.
And so I guess what I'd like to do is maybe if you could just talk a little bit about the thinking, or some of the things that went through your mind that made you realize that you have to stop. Because especially when you're running your own thing, it's easy to get so caught up in the treadmill of it that you're not really like looking at the bigger picture. So like what, apart from the fact that you were sort of feeling tired, like what made you sort of decide that what you needed to do was necessarily go back to your audience and speak to them?
I think it was seeing my team as demotivated as they were. You know, I think there was just a point where nobody could really push much harder. And if nobody was attending our events, we were like, okay, well, that's fine. We don't have to have these. And I think, you know, when you hear your team actually feeling so disheartened by it, you have to realize that there's a problem. Yeah, so that was the one thing that really stood out for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how to solve it, right? So I needed research to like understand what was happening more.
Yeah. I think maybe before I let you go, and I just wanted to, the reason that I wanted to mention that is because very often, like, you know, I see this sort of type of thing, like a team of people working towards like a bit of a dead end, and everyone's pushing as hard as they can, but it's not moving forward. And people just plod along and they like keep trying and keep trying without really taking a moment to step back. So I think, and I think what you mentioned is important, sort of taking a moment to look at the people around you and see how they're feeling. Like, you know, if you're feeling like you're not making any progress in terms of your own work, but everybody else is, maybe you can say it's a me problem. But if
Yeah.
you and everybody around you is struggling and nobody can get motivated and nothing's happening, maybe it is a sign that there's a bigger problem at work and you sort of need to pull the brakes.
It's just unfortunate that there are very few spaces where you can pull the brakes without impacting something big and heavy. And
with momentum.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then from there, so now COVID has happened, you're doing the online sessions. And then it sort of started to die out a little bit and you guys were sort of feeling worn out. And so you decided to stop and do some research. What were the things that you found out and what did you guys sort of do about that?
So the purpose of the research was for us to take a look at what our members or the audience, the people in our community were currently feeling about the industry, were feeling about their careers and their career challenges, and also how they were feeling about the impact that She Can Do is having in the community. And so we found quite a lot of different things. Nothing that would be surprisingly new. There are a couple of things that we all know is an issue with the industry, but it was an amazing reminder. So we know how difficult junior designers find it to create portfolios easily. It's just always a problem. We know about imposter syndrome. It's also always a problem. Dealing with stakeholders, also a problem. So it was a good refresher to see those things come up again and remind us also what it is that we can do and want to fix. What are the problems we want to address? So for us, though, what we found that was really interesting, well, not interesting actually, but we didn't have a website. We still don't have a website. And we tried to create one a few years ago, but we didn't have enough capacity as we were then to create something really good. And as a designer, I couldn't let... I just couldn't. It needs to be perfect, which is maybe not the right thing to say, but it feels like a lot of pressure. That whatever we put out there, everyone's going to be like, okay, let's see what they can do now.
I totally know you.
You've got an audience of designers.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's so, even when you do research or send a survey, I'm always like, someone's going to see that I didn't, word this properly. It's nerve-wracking when your audience is designers. So that was an issue, is the awareness with regards to not having a website, and people also didn't really know exactly what we were about. And I think that they still feel that way, but that's also because we went quiet during COVID and haven't really shown anyone what we're doing now. But that's, we have that awareness issue. So it's a whole cycle of issues.
Yeah.
But so one of the issues was the problems from the research was that we weren't visible enough. We also found that as an organization, we for the longest time hadn't really been producing content that was relevant to more senior level designers. So our focus for all of these years has generally been junior designers, and we just saw that was a gap in terms of the audience. So that for me was really interesting from the research. And I was like, oh yeah, hectic, why aren't we doing that? We also found some really juicy things, like issues that were affecting junior designers. And so what we then said was, now we've got all of these problems. What are the things that we can address and how do we address them?
Yeah.
And that thinking is what has led us to our new model of working. So we're no longer a meetup structured organization. We now are in like a project model. Okay.
What does that mean?
So what that means is that those areas that we chose to target from the research, we had the website, junior designer content, senior designer content. We wanted to just create project teams that would run in cycles and create things that spoke to those issues. So, for example, we have our website team who are doing this really cool exploration of putting our website together. They followed this amazing design thinking process that you will never get the opportunity to go in that much detail at every part of the design phase. It's been so cool to watch. So it's like super amazing work, and I can't wait for it to come out. But that was the one project team we created, and that's run by Kate, and we have volunteers, which is another thing I should talk about, but volunteers that are helping the organization, and they're working to create this website for us. Another project that we ran that was really interesting was looking at what content we can give to speak to the needs or the challenges of senior level designers. And so that team, they're still in the process of it, but they basically interviewed 4 female designers, design leads, and asked them about their career journeys. And they're doing a process where they've like affinity mapped all of that, and they've found themes and commonalities across the different journeys. They've also found differences to show that, you know, your career path to being a lead designer could be so different. Like, so they're translating those stories. There's a visual exercise which they're doing with like charts and flows and visual diagrams to show timelines of events, and then they're doing they're addressing the similar pain points that have been found across the different women that they spoke to. Those were really interesting. Those were, the things like imposter syndrome was a big thing that most of them had been through and figured out how to deal with. And a lot of them found that managing stakeholders was a critical skill that they needed to gain as well during that process. It's amazing work that they're doing.
So I'm going to quickly like roll a little bit back in the conversation and kind of summarize some of the things, because I think there's something important that I don't feel like, I feel like we've spoken about, but we haven't actually emphasized enough. So, you know, previously you were sort of had this model where you were running an event, and at the event you'd have people from the industry come in and join the event, listen to somebody speak about a topic they're a specialist in, and do some practical exercises in that specific regard. And that's basically how you're creating impact. That's how the organization engages with its audience and transfers knowledge. So it's clear to see what the giving back part of the nonprofit is. But and then you mentioned, you know, COVID happened and things slowed down, and then you changed to this model where you're running a number of projects in parallel. And you mentioned, you know, the website project, and you've mentioned the project about interviewing some of the women, and I'm sure there are a number of others. But what's maybe not as clear as, or is not as obvious as before, is how that actually impacts the industry in a sense, because you know an event is it's very simple. It's kind of like what you see is what you get, but what you're describing seems a little bit, even more like a organization, like a typical company, rather than event. So like how is what you're doing now providing value to the community or to the to your target audience?
Yeah, I hear you. So the model that we're trying to follow is we want to create projects that create artifacts or outcomes or reports or might be workshops. But the project teams will find a problem, explore the problem, create a solution for it, and that is supposed to go out into the world and help the world.
Okay.
And we hope, so what we're trying to do is when we do our research of the industry and we see some of the pain points and the challenges, the strategy is that the projects should address those things that we find. And in turn, so that's like to the larger community, you know, putting work out there and sharing those things. However, the other thing that we have initiated recently was the volunteer program that we run. And that was, we also saw a problem from the research. Well, the whole problem was that we can't do any of these things if we don't have the people to do them for us. Like, look at this research report. It took us 8 months. You know, so we didn't have enough people. And for the volunteer program, what we did to start it actually was I sat down with the 6 women who were helping the organization at that time and had been for a year or two, some longer. And we looked at understanding what had attracted them to the organization in the first place. Why were they still there? What were the things that they think could persuade them to leave? So I looked at why were they volunteering? I mean, I know why I'm doing it, but I was like, why are you guys doing this? And why are you doing it so well as well? And so using that understanding of what they needed from the organization and what they were getting has allowed us to create this volunteer structure that mirrors that. And so, I mean, we have a volunteer cycle starting in May, and at that point we should be a group of about 20 women. And the volunteers, although they're doing work, you know, sometimes to do for the organization or for the community, we put them in projects where they need to learn about. So if somebody is, so I'm thinking there's a woman in particular who's joining us this cycle who's looking to be a design lead, and that's like the next role she wants to work towards. And so she's going to lead one of my project teams now, and that will be her first time doing it. It's with guidance, right? So it's with my guidance as well, and she gets to do it. And if she sinks, she sinks. If she swims, she swims. And we talk about the lessons afterwards. And so we're really thinking about, for each of these volunteers that are coming here, why are they here and what can we help them achieve? And for example, one thing that we're really lacking at is social media. Like, we're so bad at our social media. I mean, you're probably going to ask me for our links later and I'll give them to you, but it's like sometimes we talk about stuff there. But in all of my volunteer cycles leading up until now, I haven't really come across anyone who I think would first of all benefit from that work or be passionate about it enough to stay motivated to stay in the volunteer program. So we're struggling a bit, obviously, with no social media, but it hasn't suited anyone yet.
Well, there we go.
So we won't do it.
Hopefully someone listening, if you enjoy social media, you know who to speak to. But Inez, I really love the volunteer model you guys are running, because it's such a safe space as well to make mistakes, which having that safe space to make mistakes, I mean, every organization should be a space where you can make mistakes. But I find that a lot of designers or creatives really struggle to take that next step in their career out of the fear of the mistakes that they will make stepping up. And this is almost like a playground, but with real designers, real mentors, real projects. But it feels a lot more safe because, like you mentioned, the implications aren't as intense or serious as it would be if you are working for the bank, like you are,
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think
just
go for it.
Cool. So I just wanted to build on what Steph is saying, sort of tying back to the question I initially asked you, because, I was mentioning the fact that you were previously an event where one person sort of shares their knowledge and does a workshop to the community. So it's kind of like a one-to-many sort of communication or value distribution approach.
Yes.
But it sounds to me that this approach has sort of got like almost like rings of influence. You've got your wider audience who looks at, the content that you publish, and the artifacts that you create, and the workshops that you develop. But then you have this inner circle of people who volunteer and actually get industry experience working under somebody, one of your project leads.
Yeah.
And it's sort of, and I think, because I think there are many people who have started events trying to help people sort of make the transition into the working environment. But the thing is, at the end of the day, in an event, you're sitting in your seat and there's a guy on the stage. Exactly.
It's just a talk. Yeah.
And talking only gets you so far. So I think I just wanted to highlight the fact that I think it's amazing that you're giving ladies the opportunity to not only contribute and like create impact with their time by volunteering, but also to get experience at the same time and in things that you wouldn't otherwise have access to in your professional environment.
And also, I think something I really try to focus on is confidence. Unfortunately, what I've seen amongst like female designers is that is the thing that stops them. Just got this like weird perception of how good they are or how bad they are, and I'm often just like, but who told you that? Or why is nobody, why don't you see how good you are? And I think we need more of that, more spaces where you feel successful and somebody tells you how good you are, and your whole team is telling you how good you are. So,
yeah.
I want to, I think earlier you actually did not answer my question. So maybe I'll ask it again now, because you started touching on it, which is, let's look at your position or your environment at the moment, which is at the APSA design office. And I don't know how many, but there's, I think, more female design directors currently than male. Yeah. And some would look at that and go, okay, cool, it doesn't look like women really need any assistance in this industry. We're doing quite well, which I want to, or I would like you to maybe dumb it down to everyone to say, why should this space exist, this community? You already mentioned one problem that you've noticed specifically in female designers, the confidence issue. But what else is there? Why should we care?
So, yeah, and it is hard because you are starting to see progress. And some of us, me included, are lucky enough to work in spaces where this is something that is enforced, it's tracked, it's monitored. However, I don't think all spaces are like that. And I think from a like woman being in power kind of position, we have them there often, but the underlying thing that needs to be looked at is how many times do they have to say something before the rest of the team agrees and aligns to their opinion? How long does it take for them to gain the respect of the team and the people that they work with? are there unconscious biases that put you in positions where you actually have to work sometimes twice as hard or put yourself out there, speak more often, be a bit louder. I think those are the subtle differences that I really see.
That's amazing. Okay,
And
so
it's those things that lead to like even women trying to take on leadership positions. Like it's so scary. And there's things like a woman will apply for a job if she meets like 100%. No, okay, I'm gonna make this up, but it's somewhere really high, like 90% of the criteria. Whereas you find that men will apply for the job even if they just meet like
that's definitely me.
and for me it's I think it takes a lot of confidence to just say, yeah, let me just try it, and if I look bad, I look bad. Or and I think as women we're just so life can be really judgmental. People can be really judgmental and harsh, and it's not that easy.
Yeah.
So I like this. So you've spoken a little bit about what the impact of what she can do has to the broader community, sort of like these artifacts that you create. And then you've mentioned like a few people who sort of work closer to you that are like your project leads. And then you mentioned this volunteer program. I just want to focus on that a little bit because I think it's super important. Like if I am, let's say, thinking about volunteering, can you tell us a little bit about like, what can I expect from the sessions? What would be expected of me, and why should I sort of give this volunteer program a chance?
That's a good question. So our volunteer program has now completed 2 cycles of volunteering. So when I say a cycle, I mean 3 months. So the program is 3 months and you volunteer for 3 months, and then you can choose to stay on if you want, or you can choose to end. And so we try to set up project deliverables that can be achieved within 3 months. So we're now in our second cycle, and each cycle we keep changing something and shifting something, like the way that the program works, because us ourselves are still learning. In fact, the first cycle was complete failure. I think we started out with like 16 applicants, and at the end of it, there was 1 volunteer who was like still engaged with the program. So it failed dismally, and it was really hard. And we, as a team, we pulled ourselves together, and we were like, okay, what went wrong? And so then we went back to all the volunteers, even the people who had dropped off, and we said, please tell us what happened. We figured out where some of the gaps were, what was going wrong, and we pivoted for the second cycle, which is now almost over. And out of like 15 volunteers, 13 are making it to the end. 2 have dropped off.
Wow.
So it's like a drastic improvement.
Yeah.
Wow. Sure.
Yeah, so relieving when something works. But, that's the design process. So we wanted the volunteer program. We needed it to do more things. So we put it together. We gave it a try. We learned within 3 months. And within 3 months, I now have something that I'm really proud of, that I think is doing really well.
Yeah.
So what can you expect as a volunteer joining the program? So you can expect to be in something that so the way we start our volunteer program after people have applied or sent us their names is we have a coffee chat one-on-one with the volunteer. And our first questions are around like, why are you here, what are the things that you actually want to do, and we understand their view or their needs specifically. And then we tell them about the program, which is that it runs for 3 months. You meet once a week with your team. You'll do about 4 or 5 hours of work individually. You may have 2 or 3 weekend workshops that come up during the 3-month cycle. Those are very optional, and there also may be social events, which are even more optional.
Okay.
And we then basically will discuss, we tell the volunteer what are the like 5 or 6 projects that we are thinking we could do. And we discuss those and then think about what's the best fit. So, for example, our website stream, when it started, it was a really good place for junior designers because it was a space for them to just get the basics, like how do you do a website? So that was amazing for people to get that hands-on experience. Now they've sort of done a lot of that work, and now it's about delivery, like pages, content, just putting it out there.
Implementation.
So that's now So that's now a different type of person who should be in that project. And so the whole change sort of shift from the learnings of cycle 1 was really just a reminder to continue to put your people first. And if you put the people first and you make sure they get what they need, they'll do whatever they can to make sure you get what you need.
All right. Sorry, just one more thing on that. When is your next acceptance for volunteers? Like if someone decides that this is something that they're interested in, how long do they have to actually hop aboard?
For our May cycle, like the one that starts 1 May, I don't know when you're going to publish
soon.
this.
Yeah.
So I don't
soon.
think. Well, if it's before the start date, we have no rules. So if I see the message the day before and the person convinces me that they want to join, we'll just invite them.
Cool.
But then there's a link to a type form, and I guess we can circulate that. And that also has the dates of the upcoming cycles. So people can start to put down their names for the next cycle. I think we've got like 3 or 4 in advance.
Cool. We'll make sure you guys have access to those links. I think we're almost going to close off. But one last thing I really want to do, seeing as, you've been on this journey as a woman building up this organization, seeing and observing women grow and seeing where they are failing, where they are struggling. I want a pep talk to all the women listening, and this is not just for women because it will resonate with any creative, I'm sure.
Oh my goodness.
But tell us some stuff, what do we need to believe? What do we need to do? Share some of the things you've learned that's made you a better woman leader, a better woman designer.
Okay, sure. That's hectic. But so one thing which I have mentioned throughout today and that I really try to remind myself of is the people first thing. I think I found a lot of success in my career in terms of putting my people first, which just naturally leads to really good work. And so I don't even want to say it as like a rule because it just feels obvious. Like if you treat people well, they'll give you really good work. So that's the people one. And I think the other thing that I have learned from She Can Do to really embrace is the mistakes that you learn. And, we've gotten to a point in She Can Do, or at least I have, where I get really excited when I figure out that something isn't going right. Or, because I'm like, that is such an interesting problem. How the hell are we going to fix that? And I don't know. Nobody else knows. And it's like, oh my God, it's so exciting. We get to figure this out.
Yeah.
So, and it's often because of problems. So one thing we've been having is like our projects are slow. And we see that with the remote work, because it's also a nonprofit, so we're not speaking to each other in our working hours, it takes really long to make decisions or to share a question and get an answer from everyone. So that's affecting our pace of work. It's also really, because we don't want to do too many meetings, I've often, and my team are so wonderfully honest with me, but I often make decisions without like telling everyone. And because I'm bouncing through She Can Do, and I'm in the one team and the other team, I'm like, oh, we should do this. And then I action it, and we don't see each other every day. And so there's no update. But at the same time, more meetings doesn't work.
Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah, I really did mess up with like some of these things, but how do we fix this? Like, how do I keep everyone updated, but not have enough, like too many meetings? And yeah, so it's a problem, but it's so exciting. So I think just like be excited about the problems that you have, because you're going to, if it's a problem or you messed up, you have so much to improve on. Even our volunteer program, just like 2 drop-offs only. It's so cool. And there are 13 women who have been a part of this program for 3 months, and they've delivered amazing work. Like,
well done.
It's cool. Yeah, it's really cool.
No, that is amazing.
And also to
Yeah.
maybe reiterate what you said. To those of you listening that thinking about applying for a job but feel unqualified or not good enough, rather go and apply.
Definitely. And I think that probably speaks to my last thing, Steph, is like confidence. What is wrong with us as designers that we are so hard on ourselves sometimes? It really it breaks my heart. Especially when I see some of the people on my teams who do such good work and they just don't see it.
Yeah.
So I don't know, find a buddy or somebody who's going to help you work on that, because if your confidence isn't right, then like everything else will be so much harder.
Yeah. Alfie and I, we did a little bit of an exercise a few months ago when we were still working partners at the same company where you're still working now. And it was basically, we both did our personality tests, and then we kind of had a chat about it, and then we forced each other to share what we think our weaknesses are from our perspective and our strengths, and then we did a reverse on, what I think his weaknesses are and his strengths. So that was really fun. I found that really insightful and surprising, because you really, really see your own strengths. It's, more often than not, we see our weaknesses. So that's maybe an idea.
And I think, sorry, but like that for me is like, that could also be a really cool project. Like maybe a team works on confidence building exercises for design leaders to work on with their teams, exercises like that, or self-awareness work, or so I think I also love that we're able to find tangible solutions to these things like confidence and imposter syndrome, and
absolutely
yeah.
So there are 2 more things that I'd like to do before we let you go. So the first, and maybe this is a little bit of an obvious question, but I just want to double check. So I mean, it started off as ladies can that UX. Ladies,
Well done.
I don't know why I'm struggling so much with this now. And it eventually transformed into she can do. Like, can men join or be a part of this thing?
Yeah, it's a good question. Also, so hard. I think I've been trying to figure this out for like 3 years. Because often there are guys who want to work with us, and I know them. I know how good they are. I know how much people could learn from them. I know how much they could contribute towards our space. And then I'm like, wait, but then why do we exist? So then I go into this crisis of existence. So where I'm at right now is that, yes, men can join, men can participate. However, with the volunteer program, I think that I want the project teams to be a space of for women only. I think that safety of a female-only voiced room is really important. But if there are other things like individual projects, like a social media strategy, or there's a lot of other things that they could help with or advise us on or work on with us, but just in a more individual manner.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Makes
I'm with you.
sense.
But I don't know. I'm like, is that even fair? Is it okay? I don't know.
Look,
Making it up as I go.
But I think that's so important. So this, I can go on forever. So I'm gonna leave it at 2 things now. So the first one didn't count. But the one that I want to mention that's really important, that I think that's super important about what you're doing and speaking about what you're doing, is bigger companies are facing the same troubles. Like, they don't know how to deal with like gender and like all of the sort of things that are happening in our culture at the moment, except like they've got so much more on the line. Like, any mistake that they make can cost them millions. And so when somebody like you or an organization like She Can Do sort of starts up and sort of navigates this sort of murky landscape, or murky is maybe a little bit of or rather unclear landscape, about gender and about how to actually start organizations focused around uplifting one without necessarily restricting the other. And I think it's important for organizations like this to come up so that we can learn the lessons at a small scale.
Yeah.
And then the bigger companies can eventually learn from what you're doing. Because otherwise, some one person at a big company who decides they want to change the industry for the sake of women puts in like a blanket rule that doesn't actually help in the long run. And so I think it's super important to have an organization like yours running so that
That's true.
people actually on the ground can learn, can engage with these dilemmas firsthand before they take them to their job.
That's
So
a
that was
really
just a
cool
thing
way
that I
to
wanna
think
mention.
about it. I love that, actually. I'm going to think about that more. And I think it's, we also have to remind ourselves of who our audience is and also maintaining diversity, which from a design perspective is so important because, so for example, one thing we're not doing well at is within our volunteer program is that it's turning into a mini ABSA.
Just a bunch of ABSA people. Like you mean
Just
like this episode?
exactly. So, and I was talking about it the other day with the woman that I run the volunteer program with, and over the past few years, it's now that all 3 of us who run the volunteer program also work for ABSA. So when we are recruiting for our program, we all are recruiting in our networks, which now is the same.
Yeah.
And so we've got this terrible cycle going. But that's a funny observation of it. But it's like such a good look at what diversity means from all perspectives. Like If you're all the same, your work is just going to be for you only and only the people in your network. Like, so, yeah, important lessons.
Okay, so the last thing, because I did say two. And, like, so you've got the volunteer program and you've got the project leads. Like, who are the people that you're actually targeting for this volunteer program? Because, you know, as a designer, like, the things that you're looking for at a junior versus the things that you're looking for at a mid versus a senior versus a director sort of changes. So who does the volunteer program and She Can Do in general try to cater to?
So, we don't. Like, we have a bad social media strategy. So we published our volunteers cycles on our LinkedIn and our Instagram and some of our personal ones as well. But there's no strategy as to where we're publishing and how. It's just putting it on the platforms. And so that's an interesting point. I'm not thinking about who are the people I want in this and let me recruit from those sections, which for me is not something that I actually want to get to. I would like to get to a awareness campaign that's a bit more strategic and bigger and diverse. However, I still like that anyone applies and then I chat to them and then I figure out what they're about and what they want to do, and then we make that work. I really love that. So, yeah, I don't think I want to get to the point where I target people. Because if you really put the people first, then you actually just let anyone join.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
But I haven't gotten anyone like bad yet who, you know, so I've also been really lucky. Like the people who sign up are amazing women who are just like, I don't know what's that, but we'll probably experience that as a problem soon.
All right. Inez, it's been amazing chatting with you. I mean, as I expected it would be, but I think more importantly, I think it's great that we're able to sort of get at least a few people to hear a few people who might not have previously hear about the work that you're doing, because I think it's super important both for our industry at large, but I think also for the individuals that are a part of your program, because those are the people I think that are going to make a lot of the changes that I think our society at the moment is longing for. So I think firstly, thank you for the work that you do. Secondly, thank you for making it on the show. And third of all, maybe before we sort of wrap up, can you let people know where they can follow you, where they can follow the program, and, you know, all of those lovely links?
Okay, so, I mean, you know what the state of our social media is, but we are on Instagram, She Can Do, and we are on Twitter also, She Can Do. But if you really want to connect with me, it's best to find me on LinkedIn. And if you want to join She Can Do on our Slack channels, which is where we do a lot more discussions actually, just reach out and I'll send you the link.
Wonderful.
I'm definitely
Cool, thank you for having me.
Channel.
Awesome,
Thanks so much,
so fun.
Inez. That was amazing.
Thank you.
Till next time, guys. Thank you for
Till
listening.
next time. Thanks for having me.